Hey everyone! Welcome back to another deep dive into the stories that shape the music industry. Today we're talking about one of the most anticipated and frankly controversial debuts in recent K-pop history. We're diving into BABYMONSTER, YG Entertainment's latest girl group that was supposed to be the next big thing, but has instead become what many are calling the company's biggest problem child. Before we get started, I just want to say how much I appreciate you all being here with me as we explore these complex stories. The music industry is full of incredible highs and devastating lows, and BABYMONSTER's journey perfectly captures both sides of that reality. So let's set the scene. It's 2023, and YG Entertainment is facing the biggest crisis in the company's history. Their golden girl group BLACKPINK is in the middle of contract renewal negotiations that are going absolutely nowhere. Stock prices are plummeting, investors are panicking, and somewhere in the background, 7 young girls are training harder than ever, completely unaware that they're about to become the most pressure-filled debut in K-pop history. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back to the beginning. YG Entertainment built its empire on girl groups that changed the game. 2NE1 revolutionized K-pop with their fierce, unapologetic attitude in 2009. Then came BLACKPINK in 2016, who took that formula global and became the biggest girl group on the planet. For over a decade, YG had the magic formula figured out. But success can become a trap, and that's exactly what happened to YG. They became so dependent on BLACKPINK's success that they forgot how to nurture other acts. By 2022, their roster was practically empty. Big Bang was finished, 2NE1 was long gone. Winner was on hiatus due to military service. Ahyeon had left for another company. YG had essentially become a one-trick pony, completely reliant on 4 women who were increasingly unhappy with how they were being managed. Meanwhile, the members who would become BABYMONSTER were grinding through what might be the most intense trainee period in YG's history. We're talking about girls who trained for an average of 4 to 5 years. Ruka, the oldest member from Japan, had been training for 6 years. 6 years of monthly evaluations, constant criticism, and the pressure of knowing that the entire future of one of K-pop's biggest companies might rest on their shoulders. The training process was documented in a survival show called Last Evaluation, and watching it now, you can see the incredible pressure these girls were under. This wasn't just about debuting a new group, this was about saving a company. Young Hyun-suk, YG's founder, was personally involved in their training, something that hadn't happened since BLACKPINK. The stakes couldn't have been higher. But here's where things started to go wrong. In 2023, as BABYMONSTER was preparing for their debut, the BLACKPINK contract situation reached a breaking point. Rumors were flying that the members wanted to leave. YG's stock price was in free fall. The company was hemorrhaging money, posting a 20.5 billion won operating loss during the months of uncertainty. This created an impossible situation for BABYMONSTER. They were supposed to be YG's next big thing, but they were also being positioned as BLACKPINK's potential replacement. The pressure was suffocating. These were teenage girls. The youngest, Chiquita, was only 14, and they were carrying the weight of an entire company's future on their shoulders. The problem started even before debut. Member Ahyeon, who many considered the standout talent of the group, suddenly went on hiatus for health reasons in November 2023. No detailed explanation was given, leaving fans to speculate about what had happened. Was it the pressure? Was there some other issue? To this day, the exact reasons remain unclear. So, BABYMONSTER debuted as a 6-member group on November 27, 2023, with their single Batter Up. And here's where the story gets really interesting. The song broke records. It became the most viewed K-pop debut song in a single day, reaching 22.59 million views in 24 hours. By every metric that mattered, it should have been a massive success. But the response from critics and the K-pop community was harsh, really harsh. The most common criticism? That Batter Up sounded exactly like a BLACKPINK reject song. That BABYMONSTER wasn't bringing anything new to the table. That YG was just recycling the same formula that had worked for 2NE1 and BLACKPINK without understanding that the K-pop landscape had completely changed. And they had a point. In 2016, when BLACKPINK debuted, the girl crush concept was relatively rare in K-pop. Most girl groups were doing cute or innocent concepts. BLACKPINK stood out precisely because they were different. But by 2023, half the industry was doing girl crush. Groups like GIDL, aespa, ITZY, and Ellie Seraphim had already carved out their own spaces in that market. BABYMONSTER wasn't filling a gap. They were trying to squeeze into an already overcrowded field. The comparisons to BLACKPINK were inevitable and brutal. Every aspect of BABYMONSTER was dissected and compared. Their styling, their choreography, their vocal delivery, everything was seen through the lens of, how does this compare to BLACKPINK? For young performers trying to establish their own identity, this was crushing. But the real problem wasn't just the music. It was the timing and the way YG handled their debut. The company was so focused on the BLACKPINK contract situation that they couldn't give BABYMONSTER the attention they deserved. The girls were essentially thrown into the spotlight as a potential replacement for the biggest girl group in the world, without being given the time or support to develop their own unique identity. Then came the second wave of problems. After months of speculation, Ahyeon returned to the group in early 2024. And YG announced that the real debut would happen in April with their first mini-album BABYMONSTER. This created confusion and frustration among fans who had supported the group since November. Were they supposed to forget about Batter Up? Was that not a real debut? When Sheesh dropped in April 2024, the criticism intensified. The song was compared to BLACKPINK's How You Like That and shut down. Music critics pointed out that it followed the exact same formula as previous YG girl group hits. The music video, the styling, the attitude. Everything felt like it had been done before, just with different faces. NME gave the album 2 out of 5 stars, with critic Carmen Chin writing that the group was attempting to carve their own identity amidst recycled material reminiscent of BLACKPINK. It was harsh, but it reflected a broader sentiment in the K-pop community that BABYMONSTER was playing it too safe, relying too heavily on a formula that had already been perfected by their predecessors. What made this even more frustrating was that the girls themselves were clearly talented. All 7 members could sing, rap, and dance at a professional level. They were multilingual, with members from South Korea, Japan, and Thailand. On paper, they had everything needed to be successful. But talent alone wasn't enough when they were being positioned as BLACKPINK 2.0 instead of being allowed to be BABYMONSTER 1.0. The pressure wasn't just external, it was internal too. Behind the scenes, YG was dealing with the reality that their entire business model was broken. They had become so dependent on BLACKPINK that they had forgotten how to develop new artists. The company's roster was thin, their other acts weren't generating significant revenue, and BABYMONSTER was supposed to fix all of these problems at once. Meanwhile, the K-pop landscape was evolving rapidly around them. Groups like NewJeans were proving that there was huge appetite for different sounds and concepts. IVE was showing that former members of disbanded groups could find new success. Lee Seraphim was demonstrating that even controversy couldn't stop a group with the right support and distinct identity. But BABYMONSTER seemed stuck in 2016, trying to recreate magic that had already been captured. The financial pressure was immense. Industry reports suggested that creating a girl group cost between $155 million and $329 million. YG had invested heavily in BABYMONSTER's training, their debut, and their promotion. But the return on investment wasn't materializing. While their YouTube numbers were impressive, domestic Korean success was limited. They weren't breaking into new markets the way BLACKPINK had. This created a vicious cycle. The more pressure YG put on BABYMONSTER to be the next BLACKPINK, the more they constrained the group's ability to find their own voice. The more critics compared them to their predecessors, the more defensive the company became about their creative choices. Instead of allowing BABYMONSTER to evolve and experiment, YG doubled down on the formula that wasn't working. The members themselves seemed aware of the comparisons and the pressure. In interviews, they spoke respectfully about being called BLACKPINK's sister group, but you could sense the weight of expectation in their responses. These were young women who had trained for years to become artists, but they were being asked to be replacements instead. The situation became even more complicated when individual members started dealing with their own challenges. Rami went on hiatus for health reasons in 2025, missing the release of several projects. For a group that was already struggling with lineup consistency and public perception, losing another member, even temporarily, was devastating. What's particularly tragic about BABYMONSTER's story is that buried underneath all the pressure and comparisons, there are glimpses of what they could be. Songs like That, which was actually written by Charlie Puth specifically for the group, showed a different side of their potential. when they weren't trying to be BLACKPINK, when they were just being themselves. There were moments of genuine artistry. But those moments were rare, overshadowed by the company's insistence on sticking to a formula that the market had already moved beyond. YG seemed incapable of understanding that what made BLACKPINK special wasn't just their sound, it was their timing, their uniqueness in the market, and their authentic chemistry as a group. The irony is that by the time BABYMONSTER debuted, BLACKPINK had renewed their group contract with YG, but not their individual contracts. This meant that the pressure on BABYMONSTER to be the company's savior was both real and completely unnecessary. YG had secured their golden goose for group activities, but they had already traumatized their new group by treating them as a replacement rather than a complement. As we look at BABYMONSTER's situation now, it's clear that they've become a cautionary tale about the dangers of success. YG Entertainment achieved incredible heights with 2NE1 and BLACKPINK, but that success blinded them to the changing industry around them. They tried to recreate magic instead of creating something new, and in the process, they turned 7 incredibly talented young women into the embodiment of their own creative bankruptcy. The saddest part is that it didn't have to be this way. BABYMONSTER could have been positioned as the beginning of YG's new era rather than as a desperate attempt to recreate their past glory. They could have been given the time and creative freedom to develop their own sound, their own image, their own place in the K-pop ecosystem, but the problems went deeper than just creative direction. The way YG managed BABYMONSTER's debut revealed fundamental issues with how the company approached modern artist development. Unlike their approach with 2NE1 and BLACKPINK, who were given time to grow, BABYMONSTER was rushed into the spotlight with unrealistic expectations. The international response was particularly telling. While domestic Korean audiences were lukewarm, international fans were more receptive, but even they couldn't escape the comparison shadow. Every reaction video inevitably came back to BLACKPINK. The girls weren't being judged on their own merits. This created a psychological burden that's hard to overstate. Imagine being a teenager, having trained for years to achieve your dreams, only to debut and be told you're not good enough because you're not exactly like someone else. The confidence issues were visible in early performances, where you could see members second-guessing themselves. The industry context makes this even more tragic. By 2024, the K-pop market was more competitive than ever. Groups like IVE had former members bringing instant recognition. New Jeans had revolutionized the sound. Lee Seraphim had overcome scandal through determination and smart positioning. BABYMONSTER entered this hyper-competitive market carrying the weight of YG's past instead of the freedom of their future. While other companies were taking creative risks and finding success through innovation, YG was playing it safe with a formula that had moved beyond market relevance. The member dynamics also suffered under this pressure. In a healthy group environment, members complement each other and grow together. But when you're constantly being compared to another group, individuals start competing against ghosts instead of collaborating. You could see this in how Ahyeon was positioned as the Jenny of the group, or how Chiquita was expected to be the next Lisa. This kind of role assignment is creatively limiting and psychologically damaging. Instead of allowing each member to discover their own strengths, YG was asking them to cosplay as their predecessors. It's no wonder that members needed hiatuses for health reasons. The pressure was unsustainable. What's particularly frustrating is that when you look at BABYMONSTER's individual talents, you can see incredible potential that was never properly nurtured. Ruka's rap skills had their own flavor. Farita's vocals had a unique tone. Asa's dance abilities were impressive and different from BLACKPINK. But instead of building on these individual strengths, YG kept pushing them into the BLACKPINK mold. The result was a group that felt like a cover band rather than an original act with their own artistic vision. The timing of their debut also worked against them. They arrived just as the K-pop industry was having important conversations about mental health and artistic freedom. BABYMONSTER's struggles became a case study in everything wrong with the traditional trainee system. Instead, they became YG's problem child, not because they lacked talent or potential, but because they were burdened with impossible expectations from day one. They were asked to solve problems they didn't create, to fill shoes that were never meant to be filled, and to carry the weight of a company's entire future. The global K-pop community watched this unfold with sympathy and frustration. Fans could see the talent in these 7 young women, but they could also see how that talent was being constrained. Social media was full of comments like, "BABYMONSTER deserves better." This wasn't just fan dramatics, it was genuine recognition that something valuable was being wasted. The creativity that had made YG special was being sacrificed for a safe, predictable approach that satisfied no one. The financial implications were significant too. While Baby Monster achieved impressive streaming numbers, the return on investment wasn't matching expectations. The company had spent millions on their training and debut, but the revenue wasn't materializing at expected levels. This created additional pressure for the girls, who were aware that their performance was being closely watched. Every chart position, every album sale became a measure of their worth not just as artists, but as investments. Looking at Baby Monster's story, we see the dark side of the K-pop industry's obsession with repeating success. Sometimes the pressure to recreate magic ends up destroying the very thing that made the original special. These 7 young women deserved better than to become symbols of their company's creative limitations. Baby Monster's journey isn't over, and there's still time for them to find their own path. But their story serves as a reminder that in an industry built on creating the next big thing, sometimes the biggest mistake is trying too hard to recreate what came before. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into one of K-pop's most complex debut stories. Baby Monster's situation shows us that talent isn't always enough when the system around you is broken. What do you think? Could Baby Monster still find their own identity? Or are they forever trapped by the shadow of their predecessors? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that explore the real human cost behind the glittering world of K-pop. Until next time, keep questioning the narratives we're told about success and failure in the music industry.